What if the thing hurting you the most was not meant to harm you, but to change your whole life forever? The prairie held its silence like a secret. The wide land stretched out flat and lonely, with only a few crooked fence posts and the thin line of cottonwoods breaking the endless view. Clara Boon rode her tired mare, Juniper, toward the small, sod house she called home. The sun was sinking low, casting long shadows that made the land look even more empty. Dust clung to Clara's skirt. Her hands were rough and calloused from years of hard work. Her cattle dog, Scout, trotted beside her. His gray coat was full of burrs from chasing jackrabbits. He was the closest thing to family she had now. Sometimes Clara talked to him as if he were a man who could answer. "No rabbits in the traps today," she muttered. "Not even one." Scout's tail wagged once, as if to tell her she wasn't alone out here. Not really. Clara was 34 and had lived alone on the plains for 7 years. This ranch had once been her father's dream and her husband Jacob's pride. Now it was barely holding together. The fences leaned. The soil was cracked. Even the cattle seemed tired of trying. Still, Clara stayed. She stayed because she had nowhere else to go. She stayed because leaving felt like letting the land win. And she stayed because something inside her refused to give up. She swung down from the saddle and winced as her knee throbbed again. For a week now, a strange swelling beneath the skin had been growing. Hard, hot, angry. She told herself it was nothing. Just a bruise, just old pain. But today the ache was sharp enough to stop her in her tracks. "I'm fine," she told Scout, even though her breath hitched from the lie. The small sod house sat quiet, smoke drifting from the chimney. Inside it smelled of wood, smoke, leather, and the dried sage she hung to keep insects away. It was built for survival, not comfort, but she had made it home. She cooked a small pot of beans and a slice of salt pork. The food filled her stomach, but brought no comfort. Her knee pulsed with heat. She pushed up her skirt and stared at the swelling. It bulged red and tight. It looked wrong. It felt wrong. "Lord, help me," she whispered, even though she had not prayed properly since Jacob died. She sat at the small table, oil lamp flickering, and pressed 2 fingers to the lump. Pain shot through her as the swelling shifted beneath her touch. Then it happened. A sudden pop, a sickening, wet sound that made her gasp. Scout jumped up, barking once. Clara grabbed a clean rag, expecting blood or pus to spill out. But something else pressed forward. Something small, something hard, something wrapped. Her hands shook as she pulled it free. The swelling on her knee was already shrinking, the pain sliding away like a bad dream. She stared at the tiny bundle. It was no larger than her thumb, wrapped in soft rawhide. "What in heaven's name?" she whispered. She unwrapped it slowly. Inside lay beads stitched in perfect patterns of blue, white, and black. The design looked like stars and mountains. It was Apache beadwork, a medicine bundle, a sacred charm. But why had it come out of her? The firelight made the beads shine. Clara sat frozen. Her breath trembled. Scout whined softly, sensing her fear. Clara thought of Jacob. She saw his smile. She heard him singing hymns while he mended fences. She remembered holding him during the fever that took his life. She remembered praying until her throat hurt, begging God to save him. He never got better. Her prayers were never answered. Until now. This strange thing had healed her knee in seconds, and she had no idea how or why. "Lord, if this is your doing," she whispered with tears stinging her eyes, "show me what it means." It was the first true prayer she had spoken in years. The lamp sputtered out, leaving the cabin in shadow. She sat all night, Scout pressed against her leg, the small bundle resting in her hands. It felt warm, alive, important. When dawnlight touched the edges of the window, Clara finally stood. Her knee bent without pain. She walked to the creek and splashed cold water on her face. Her heart pounded as she pulled the bundle from her pocket again. The beadwork looked even more detailed in the daylight. Stars, mountains, arrows, messages she could not read. "Reverend Harris might know what to make of you," she said aloud. But the thought of going to town made her stomach twist. Folks hadn't welcomed her since Jacob died. Their looks, their whispers, the way they pitied her or ignored her. Still, she needed answers. Back at the cabin, she packed food, a spare shirt, and Jacob's old Bible. She saddled Juniper and whistled for Scout. "We're headed to Pine Creek," she said. "One way or another, we'll figure this out." The ride to town was long. The trail weaved through tall grass and scattered pines. Clara kept touching the bundle through her pocket. It felt heavier with each mile. By midday, she saw the buildings of Pine Creek appear. She tied Juniper outside the boarding house. Inside, the warm smell of stew and bread filled the air. Mrs. Peterson greeted her kindly, though others stared. Clara ate in silence and tried to ignore the whispers. When she finally climbed the stairs to her rented room, she felt the weight of the tiny bundle pulling on her spirit. Sleep refused to come. Strange dreams haunted her. A child laughing, Jacob's voice calling her name. The sound of drums. The glow of firelight. When dawn rose again, Clara knew she had to go straight to the church. She climbed the steps slowly, heart thudding. Scout pressed close to her side. Inside, the smell of books and lamp oil filled the air. Reverend Harris looked up, surprised, but gentle. "Clara Boon," he said softly. "It's been a long time." Without a word, she placed the small bundle on his desk. The moment he saw it, his eyes widened. "Mercy," he breathed. "Where did you get this?" Quote. Clara told him everything. The pain, the swelling, the burst, the healing. When she finished, Reverend Harris leaned back, shaken. "I have seen such bundles before," he said quietly. "Long ago, near Fort Apache. These are not trinkets. They are sacred, powerful." Before he could say more, boot heels sounded on the church floor. Deputy Calhoun filled the doorway, his badge catching the morning light. "Well now," he said with a cold smile. "Heard we had something unusual in town." His eyes locked on the bundle, and Trouble began walking straight toward her. Clara's fingers tightened around the edge of Reverend Harris's desk as Deputy Calhoun stepped closer. His boots rang against the church floor, sharp and heavy. He stared at the medicine bundle like it was a rattlesnake ready to strike. "Indian charms," Calhoun said. "Things like that bring trouble. You best stay away from it, Boone." Reverend Harris tried to speak. "Deputy, this is a sacred item, not something to fear." Calhoun ignored him. His eyes stayed locked on Clara. "You already live out there like a ghost. Folks barely see you anymore. Now you start bringing this sort of thing into town. You'll make people nervous." Clara lifted her chin. "I didn't bring it. It came to me." Calhoun laughed once, cold and hard. "Nothing comes to you unless you call it." Clara stepped forward. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," Calhoun replied, "that the railroad men won't like this. Won't like you. And I've got a duty to keep things peaceful." Reverend Harris moved between them. "Deputy, that's enough." Calhoun tipped his hat, eyes still on Clara. "Think about what I said. People talk, and rumors travel fast when the railroad's coming through." Then he walked out, leaving the air thick with warning. Clara swallowed hard. Trouble had found her, and this time she wasn't sure she could outrun it. Reverend Harris rested a hand on her arm. "I'll write to someone I trust, someone who might know the meaning behind this bundle." Clara nodded, though her heart thumped with dread. She gathered the bundle, tucked it into her pocket, and stepped out into the morning light. Town felt different now. Eyes followed her. Whispers brushed her back. Strange woman. Living alone changed her. Should have sold that ranch long ago. She tried to ignore it as she headed back to the boarding house. Scout walked close, almost pressing against her leg. His steady presence kept her grounded, even as unease grew inside her. That evening, she climbed the narrow stairs to her rented room. Scout curled on the floor beside her bed, ears pricked. Clara lay awake long after the moon rose, the medicine bundle warm in her pocket. But sleep refused to come easy. Strange dreams clawed at her mind. Jacob's voice calling her name. A child's laughter she had never heard before. Something glowing in the dark. Something watching her. Something waiting. She woke with a start just before dawn, heart pounding. And then she heard wagon wheels. She rushed to the window. A small wagon pulled slowly down the street. A woman drove it. Her long, dark hair was tied in a braid, and beside her sat a small boy slumped forward, weak and pale. Clara's breath caught. The wagon stopped in front of the church. Clara hurried outside. Reverend Harris was already stepping out of the chapel as the woman reached out with trembling arms. "Please," she said in accented English, "I seek the Reverend. My boy is very sick." Clara looked at the boy. His eyes were half closed. His skin glistened with fever. Something inside Clara tightened. She had seen that look. She had watched it take Jacob. Reverend Harris stepped forward. "I am Harris. Bring him inside." But before the woman could move, she looked directly at Clara, and her voice cracked. "I also searched for something stolen, something holy, a medicine bundle taken from my husband. He was a healer." Clara's heart stopped. The woman's eyes drifted down, straight to Clara's pocket. Clara froze. She reached slowly inside, pulled out the small rawhide bundle, and opened her hand. The woman gasped softly. Tears filled her eyes. "It is his," she whispered. "My husband's. Soldiers took it before they killed him." Clara's fingers tightened around it. "This was inside me." The woman nodded, as if she had expected those strange words. The spirit finds its path. The boy coughed suddenly, a deep, painful sound that made his whole body shake. Without thinking, Clara stepped forward and steadied him. The moment his small hand grabbed her knee, the exact place where the lump had burst, his breathing eased, his shoulders relaxed, his eyes opened wider. A few townsfolk had gathered, watching with wide eyes. Clara felt their stares. Nael, the woman, looked at her with gratitude and awe. "You were chosen to carry it," Nael whispered. "It came to you for a reason." Quote. Clara shook her head. "I'm no chosen anything. I'm just trying to keep my ranch from falling apart." Nael touched the boy's head gently. "Sometimes that is exactly the kind of person the Creator chooses, the one who needs healing most." Before Clara could answer, heavy footsteps pounded down the street. Calhoun. He strode toward them, hand on his gun, eyes burning. "What's going on here?" he barked. "Why is there an Indian wagon in town?" Reverend Harris stepped forward. "Deputy, calm yourself. This woman and child need help." "This town ain't the place for them," Calhoun snapped. "Not with the railroad coming. Last thing we need is trouble." Clara stepped in front of Nael and the boy. "Then, talk to me," she said. "Not them." Calhoun's lips curled. "You're making yourself a problem, Boon. One the railroad won't ignore." Clara glared back. "Let them try." Calhoun stared at her, long and cold, then turned and walked away. But Clara knew the fight had only begun. That night she brought Nael and her boy to the boarding house. Mrs. Peterson gave them a room without question. Clara watched Nael settle the boy into bed. His fever was still high, his breathing still rough. Clara knelt beside him and brushed hair from his forehead. "I won't let anything happen to you," she whispered. Nael smiled softly. "You speak like a mother." Clara's throat tightened. "I never got the chance to be one." Silence filled the room. Scout lay beside Tahu, keeping watch. The medicine bundle sat on the table, its beadwork glowing in the lamplight. Clara looked at the small family before her. Something warm and fierce lit inside her chest. She would protect them, no matter what. When morning came, the boy's fever was still strong. Nael's voice trembled. "He needs quiet, not this town." Clara nodded. "Come to my ranch. You'll be safe there." They packed quickly, climbed onto the wagon, and headed toward the hills. Clara drove. Nael held her boy close. And behind them, hidden from sight, Deputy Calhoun watched. His eyes filled with anger, his hand drifting toward the gun at his hip. The trail home was long and winding. The wagon wheels bumped over stones as Clara guided Juniper up the ridge toward her ranch. The air felt heavy, as if the land itself sensed trouble following close behind. Nael held Tahu in her arms. The boy's breaths came slow and warm against her shoulder. "You'll be safe soon," Clara said. Her voice was steady, but deep inside her chest, a quiet fear pressed like a closing hand. By the time they reached the cabin, sunlight was fading behind the hills. Clara helped Nail carry the boy inside and set him near the hearth. Scout lay beside him, warm and watchful. Nail began mixing herbs from her pack. Clara lit the oil lamp and watched the shadows climb the walls. Life at the ranch settled into a new rhythm. Days passed with quiet work. Clara hauled water, chopped wood, mended fences. Nail cared for Tahu and kept the fire burning. The cabin smelled different now, like herbs drying in bundles, smoke, and warm broth. The smell of family, Clara realized, a feeling she thought she'd never have again. By the fourth day, the boy's fever finally broke. Tahu sat up, weak but smiling. Clara knelt beside him and touched his cheek. "You're a strong one," she said. "You fixed my shoes," he whispered, "so I have to be strong." Clara smiled, and something gentle moved inside her. A place in her heart that had long been empty began to feel full again. But the peace did not last. One hot afternoon, while Clara and Tahu were working at the fence line, the sound of hooves cracked through the still air. 6 riders came up the trail, Deputy Calhoun at their head. 2 men in clean suits sat behind him. Railroad men. Clara's stomach dropped. Calhoun stopped his horse in front of her and tipped his hat with a twisted grin. "Afternoon, Boon," he said. "These gentlemen have business with you." One of the men leaned forward. "I'm Mr. Thatcher. This valley will hold the new railroad line. The path goes straight through your ranch." Clara's jaw tightened. "This land is mine. My husband built our life here. I'm not selling." Mr. Thatcher's smile thinned. "You have 1 week to reconsider. After that, the government allows us to take it." Quote. Nail stepped out of the cabin with Tahu. Calhoun's eyes turned sharp. "This is exactly the kind of trouble we talked about," he said. "Harboring Indians, stirring up questions when the railroad needs things quiet." Clara stepped in front of Nail. "They stay with me, and this land stays mine." Calhoun's voice dropped low. "Then you better be ready to fight." The men rode away, leaving a trail of dust that stung Clara's eyes. The week that followed was full of grit and fear. Clara repaired everything she could. She patched leaks in the roof, stacked firewood, sharpened tools. Nail made medicines for wounds that hadn't happened yet. Tahu helped carry water and fed Scout-dried meat. But Clara felt the clock ticking in every sunrise. On the 7th night, before dawn, torches glowed along the trail. Riders. Many of them. Clara grabbed her shotgun and stood on the porch. Her hands were steady. Her breath was even. Scout growled deep in his throat. Nail stood behind Clara, holding Tahu close. Calhoun stepped into the torchlight. "Clara Boon," he said loudly, "you're under arrest." Quote. "For what?" Clara demanded. "For refusing lawful orders, for harboring hostile Indians, and for standing in the way of federal progress." Men surged forward. Scout lunged, teeth bared. Someone kicked him hard. Scout yelped and fell into the dirt. "Scout!" Clara cried. The shotgun shook in her hands. She could fight. She wanted to fight. But if she did, Nael and Tahu would be caught in the crossfire. Slowly, with her heart breaking, Clara put the gun down. "Don't hurt them," she said. "I'll come." 10 minutes later, tied at the wrists, she was hauled onto a horse and dragged toward Pine Creek. The last thing she saw was Nael holding Tahu, standing in the torchlight, tears on her cheeks. The jail cell was cold and dark. Clara sat on the narrow cot with her head in her hands. She had lost Jacob, lost her child, lost her pride, and now she feared losing everything else too. But late that night, a soft sound woke her, a low whine. She rushed to the barred window. "Scout?" she whispered. There he was, limping, hurt, but alive. And in his mouth was something glowing faintly, the medicine bundle. Clara's breath caught. "Good boy," she whispered, tears falling as she reached through the bars. He pressed the bundle into her hands. Warmth spread through her palms. Strength filled her chest. She wasn't done fighting. Not now. Not ever. Sunday came. They held her trial in the church. People filled the pews. The railroad men sat in the front. Calhoun stood near the door with a smug look on his face. Reverend Harris read out the charges. When he finished, Clara stepped forward. Her voice shook at first, but grew stronger with each word. "This bundle healed my knee. It healed a dying child. It isn't witchcraft. It's a gift. A reminder that God works in ways we don't understand." Whispers filled the room. Then Nael stood. She stepped into the center aisle with Tahu at her side. Her voice carried clear and strong. "This belonged to my husband," she said. "A healer. Soldiers killed him for what he knew. This bundle holds prayers. It saved my boy." Tahu lifted his small, repaired moccasin. "Miss Clara fixed these," he said softly. "She saved me too." Quote, Silence fell. Reverend Harris wiped his eyes. Mrs. Peterson stood up and shouted, "Let the woman go!" Quote, Others joined, voices rising. The church seemed to swell with the sound of people choosing justice over fear. The preacher raised his hand. "The charges are dismissed," he said. "Clara Boon is free." Outside, sunlight poured over the town like a blessing. Scout ran to Clara, tail wagging. Tahu threw his arms around her waist. Nael stood close, her hand trembling in Clara's. The railroad men stormed off in anger. Calhoun glared at Clara, but for the first time she saw doubt in his eyes. Clara knew trouble might come again. But she also knew she was not alone anymore. As Nael, Tahu, and Scout walked beside her, she looked toward the hills, the place she had always belonged. A new beginning waited there. A home filled not with silence, but with love, warmth, and hope. Clara lifted her face to the wind and whispered one final prayer. "Thank you,